Hey, welcome to another very exciting episode of the Real Deal podcast. Let's get it. Once again, welcome to another exciting episode of the Real Deal podcast. I'm your host, as always, Courtney Harden. Glad to be back. Happy Saturday. It is February, finally, February 1st, 2025. It's been the, the longest January, I think, that we have seen in a long time. But first and foremost, I want to send prayers and condolences to. We had a couple of plane crashes this past week. We had one near in DC and in Philly, here in Philly, like yesterday. But again, I want to send my thoughts and prayers to all those that were affected, those tragic plane crashes, and to the families as well. So yeah, definitely thoughts and prayers because, like I said, we're living in a time, and it's a lot of things happening, and it's hard to explain, but it's just it's I just say that I always say let God do his work, and God will be with everybody, and like I said, just pray for healing and all those that were affected by that as well. But you can follow me on social media and all the podcast platforms, the show at Get the Real Deal on all, like I said, on all podcast platforms, however you consume podcasts, whether it's uh, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. We're on the Roku channel, BS3 Network, BS3TVLive.com, Roku channel, Spreaker. Like I said, wherever you get podcasts, you can follow me there. You can follow the network, BS3 Network. And yeah, so and they say I Get the Real Deal. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and everywhere else. So yes, but I have a great guest coming onto the show. I'm not going to keep her waiting too much longer, and she is in the background here, so I'm going to bring her in. Melissa Kim. Let me break down her resume for you because she does a little bit of everything. She's a journalist, a digital host, reporter. She does ESPN Plus, Bleacher Report. She covers the Howard University football as well. She's on 105.7 The Fan with the Ravens. What else? WSA 9. That's DC's local news. Yeah, so she does a lot. So I'm glad to get her on. So Melissa Kim, welcome to the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for the intro. Yeah, and listen, all those words, they're just fancy words for just a reporter. You know what I mean? We just make up titles now. But thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for doing this, and thank you, like I said, for connecting. We talked about this before we started, and reached out, and we followed each other, and then here we are. So again, I can't thank you enough for the time, and looking
Sure, of
forward
course.
to having you on, and looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have. So out of your busy schedule, because you are, like you said, you do a lot of everything, but it's a great, tremendous work that you do. So we'll get into all that. So again, thank you, really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Football unfortunately is over for me now. So it's a little less hectic,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was a good season for sure.
Yeah, very good season. So we'll get into the seasons and things like that. So first, I want to ask you is um, who is Melissa Kim? First, how did you get started? And just yeah, we'll do a little quick intro of
Sure.
who you are and how you got started into sports journalism. You can go as long as you want. Floor is yours.
Oh no. I guess I would like to think that I am a journalist who has integrity and empathy. I think that is
Yeah.
foremost very, very important. I think, unfortunately, we live in a world right now where I think we, as a people, as a society, have lost the sense to be empathetic for other human beings.
Mm,
I think that is such a big thing that is so lacking in society. And I know media sometimes gets to be targets of criticism because of the lack of empathy. So we're trying to bring it back. At least I
Right.
am.
Yes.
But I'm born and raised in LA, California girl for sure. And spent some time growing up in Europe as well, in Germany when I was a kid, because my family lived there. And we moved to Baltimore when I was in high school, junior in high school, which when you're 16 and you're taken away from all your friends and your lifelong home and stuff like that, not the best thing, not the best. I was not very thrilled about it at first. But no, I really ended up growing to love the East Coast and all that. But I got started in journalism. I've always loved college football. That's been my bread and butter. My dad was a professor at USC in Southern California when I was growing up. My mom and all her family, they all went to UCLA, big UCLA supporters till this day. So we had that big rivalry in my household growing up. And I guess in college, so I went to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. I was a political science major, so I didn't major in journalism at all. But I interned at the NBC station in Baltimore, as well as ESPN before my senior year of college. And that's one thing I always like tell people, young people especially that want to get into this. There's no like one path. You know, you don't have if you don't want to major in journalism, don't major in journalism. I'm sure
Right.
professors are going to throw things at me right now. But I mean, my interest was in politics. You know, like originally I wanted to go to law school and I was really interested in constitutional law and how the Supreme Court makes decisions, you know.
Okay.
And so that was kind of my background more or less. But I also really love to write. I think growing up, writing was always one of my biggest strengths. And you know, you write journals and diaries and like all that stuff when you're a kid. So that was a big thing for me. So I always wanted to be involved in writing in some way, shape, or form. And so out of college, I wanted to live in New York City with all my best friends. We all moved to New York City together to be like 21 and, you know, living life in New York.
Right.
We had a great time. I love New York. You know what I mean? Like I've always been a city girl, obviously being born and raised in LA. But I worked at a 24-hour cable station called News 12 The Bronx, up in the Bronx. So I was taking the train and the bus by myself up to, up to the Bronx at like 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. Is great. It's very much like a sink or swim moment. You know what I mean? Like, can you do this? Can you take the train and the bus by yourself? Like when it's all dark out and they're like, you know what I mean? And so I did that for a couple of years. I worked on the assignment desk there, an entry level position, worked some overnights. And I was a news producer as well. And then I always knew I wanted to do sports, I think, inherently, whether I like really knew it, like spoken into existence or not. But I would come into the station on my days off and go out into the field with the sports guys to try and learn how to do this job, essentially, because pretty much everything, it's kind of changing a little bit now once you get to like some bigger cities. But, you know, you do have to know how to shoot and edit and do everything yourself. Yeah. So I learned how to do all that. Got my first on-air job in Bangor, Maine, the NBC station there. Bangor, Maine is Market 155. I had a great time there. I loved working in Bangor. It definitely a little bit of culture shock, you know what I mean, in terms of being a small town in like one of the whitest white places in America. It definitely was like, you know, definitely stood out for sure. So I was there for about 3 years, but I always knew, again, going back to college football, I always knew I wanted to I would die to cover college football. So when I was trying to move on to the next step from Maine, I literally just went to every single I like thought of like every single college sports town in America, college football town in America, and looked up like every station, every news director, every sports director, and I sent out my reel to them. You know what I mean? Like, I love college football, please hire me. And so I ended up in Birmingham, Alabama, which they cover Alabama and Auburn. And my first season there was actually the Iron Bowl Kick Six game where Chris Davis ran, you know, it's supposed to be the greatest. I think it is the greatest college football game in history. And so that was kind of my introduction into the SEC football world. So that was incredible. I had 2 years in Alabama that I just loved. I mean, we were traveling to pretty much every single SEC town. So I went, you know, it's not like glamorous going to Starkville, Mississippi or like Fayetteville, Arkansas, but it was still so cool just to experience all these things, all these traditions and all the things that happen in every college sports town and how people really just, you know, engage and like gather towards, like, you know, there's just so much passion involved in it. That's why I love SEC football so much, college football so much. So I was there for 2 years. And then after that, I went to Madison, Wisconsin. I was there for 4 years. Obviously covering the Packers, the Badgers, the Bucks, the Brewers. I was fortunate that the teams were all pretty. I've been, knock on wood, I've been pretty fortunate that in all the teams that I've covered, in all the cities I lived in, they've all been pretty successful. I mean, obviously, Alabama and Auburn goes without saying, and Wisconsin was pretty good at football and basketball, hockey, a bunch of sports while I was there. So I was there for 4 years, and then came back to Baltimore in 2020 during the pandemic because they were gutting sports departments across the country. We didn't really know at the time like what was going to happen. And so about 2 weeks after I came back to Baltimore where my family was, my dad was actually diagnosed with cancer. And so we lost him 6 months after that. So that was definitely a pivotal moment, I think, in my life, obviously in like my career, in the sense that, when you cover death and when you cover unfortunate situations, obviously as a human being, you feel horrible, you feel empathetic towards them. But I think after my dad died and I'd experienced that firsthand, it definitely changed my viewpoint and perspective in terms of how I approach people, talking to people, sharing memories of their lost loved ones and stuff. So I think in a weird way, it definitely made me a better journalist. It made me better at my job. So yeah, I didn't have a job for a while when I came back because I was taking care of my family. And then ended up working for the Ravens broadcast team because they are the partner stations with the NBC affiliate in Baltimore, where the same sports guys that I'd interned for were still working there. So in 2021, I was the first female member of the Ravens broadcast team.
Okay.
I was a studio host, and I was doing pregame, halftime, and postgame alongside Rod Woodson, the Hall of Fame safety, and amazing human being, love him to death. As well as Jerry Sandusky, who's the play-by-play guy. Definitely owe him a huge chunk of my career. I kept in touch with him over the years after I interned for him, and he was always so gracious and so wonderful. And I was with the broadcasting for about 2 years, and then I left so that I could work in DC because I wanted to be able to kind of, move up the ranks a little bit, see what I'm capable of.
Right.
So that kind of leads me to last year, I just worked at and I was doing post game, and I had my own show on the Fan, the Odyssey station in Baltimore. So I was doing that, and I was working at WSA 9. They're the local CBS affiliate in Washington, D.C. So I was doing news and sports for WSA 9, which I'd done some news in Bangor as well, a little bit in Birmingham as well, just because in every situation that you're in, it's always good to be versatile, in my opinion. And also, when there's a tornado in Birmingham, Alabama, sports doesn't matter. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter when you do sports, whether it's news. Like, you are going out there to cover tornadoes. You know what I mean? So I'm in the big belief that sports people can always cover news because at the end of the day, the skill set that you're using in sports, like calling games, it's a live shot. It's breaking news.
Right.
So that I think translates over pretty well. But yeah, and then this past season, during the off season, some wonderful opportunities just kind of came my way. I kind of pursued, because I knew I needed some experience to do some sideline. So met some folks that run the ESPN Plus situation over at Howard University. So I was with them. I was doing color and sideline for them. And Bleacher Report needed a digital host. Happened to know a friend that works there, who is now my boss, actually. And he was like, actually, we randomly just met up for coffee in New York while I was there for a weekend. And he was like, hey, what are you doing this season? I was like, trying to piece it together. And he was like, we would really need a digital host right now. Like, are you interested? I'm like, yes, of course. So ended up working 4 jobs this football season.
Wow.
I've had 2 days off in a row since July. But I mean, it was really great. Like the Howard University experience, that was the most fun I've had doing this job in a really long time. And a good reminder, I think, of why I started doing this. Because again, the college football world is so great. I know it's changing right now with NILs and different recruiting things that are still, I think, changing. I think we're going to see a lot more changes to come still with the NCAA, but college football is just so great. It's just so, just like the community that it creates, the spirit that it creates, like what you feel in your soul. I think when in the college football world, especially in the HBCU world, this is my first experience really covering the HBCU in depth. And, I'm a little biased towards Howard, obviously, but I had such a great experience. The coaches, the staff, the players, they were just so appreciative, I think, of the time that I took to spend with them, because I don't think that they get a whole lot of that, which is unfortunate. You know what I mean? And I really have talked to some of the higher ups of people that I've worked with at ESPN to be like, no, why isn't there more coverage for HBCUs?
Right,
there's rich tradition involved in it. And here's the thing at the end of the day is a lot of those kids are just as talented and have,
Hmm.
the natural raw talent of guys that play at the Power Five level. I mean, I've covered the Big Ten, I've covered the SEC, the ACC. So, it isn't for lack of effort or talent or anything like that. But I
Right.
really wish, I mean, I'm trying to become a little bit of an advocate for this, that HBCUs would get more coverage, that they would get more attention.
For sure. I agree 100%.
So that's
And
kind of like my
no,
summation of
that's
my
no,
life right
no, you painted the picture perfectly because no, you painted like your career. So like I said, if anybody asks you, you painted that perfectly. And I love asking that question. Like first, that's the first question I always ask most of my guests is, paint the picture of who you are, and you do from the beginning to where you are today. And because everybody's journey is always different,
Yes, of course.
and everybody has a different path of how they got into whatever it is, journalism, media, news, sports, business, whatever it is. And I love hearing that the storytelling of that, because it makes you think too. Like, okay, I started here, I
Hmm.
went here, I was here, and like you said, you said a lot of great things, a lot of important things. But the one thing I really got out of that too was how important versatility is, and
Yes, for sure.
you said to be able to edit, to be able to shoot your own shots, be able to to do a lot of different things, be behind the camera, in front of the camera, be a reporter, to know all the skill sets that you have, because I think that's what's in some ways gives people a better chance to pursue a career like this, just to be
Oh yeah.
versatile. So how would you say versatility, how important that really is, because you're living that now of the versatility. And another question I would ask you is about, as you said, journalism and where it is today, lacking that compassion, lacking that realness, lacking that empathy, and authenticity. And to talk a little bit about that too.
Versatility, I think, is really important for me personally because I worked on the assignment desk, because I was a producer. I think it's given me, again, I use that word empathy so much. I think it's given me a little bit of empathy towards those people that I work with now behind the scenes
Yeah.
in terms of producers and assignment desks. Like, if you've only been a reporter, you don't know what it's like to have to panic and like run around and like when like things are
Right,
happening like
right.
in the middle of a show. And like for that, in that instance, like I think that most of the producers and assignment as people that I've worked with would say that like I'm pretty like chill, like pretty easygoing and all that, because I understand like what they're going through.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna say like, oh, like, well, they're like, oh, can we move you down? Like, oh, can we? I'm like, yeah, whatever you need to do. Like, I'm ready. I'm here, ready to go. You do what you need to do, and I will deliver. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
And then in times where a story hasn't been on time yet or whatever, and they're like, we need you to stretch. We need you to talk more. And so I think that, I mean, I can always do that. And one thing that I will say is that my back, like, so I've really only worked in TV until I went to the broadcast team for the Ravens. And also, obviously, I'm on the fan now. Um, TV obviously can sometimes be limiting in terms of what you can do, because you're given, here's like your minute 30 that you need to fill for sports, like in a live shot. You know what I mean? And that's pretty
Right.
much it. But in radio, like, I mean, I have to fill 2 hours by myself. And
Hmm.
so you really learn, I think, to talk a little bit more. And for me, like, I've always prided myself on the relationships that I built with coaches and players, especially when you're covering just one team like the Ravens. And so, like, I have built some really great relationships with some of these wonderful guys that play on this team. And in that sense, I talk to them a lot about a lot of things. I mean, like, about their mom and like, how their family's doing and just like what they do like in their free time. It's not always just about like, hey, this is what I'm doing on the like, about this next play, about this next game. And
Right.
you really get to know some of these guys as people. I like think about the one guy I think about, there's two guys I really think about is John Simpson. So he's a left guard. He came to the Ravens last season after he was cut by the Raiders. And so he was named the starting left guard in week 3 of the preseason in Tampa. And I remember distinctly in that locker room talking to him after the game, and he was just, I think, stunned in a way that he was named the starting left guard.
Mhm.
And then I talked to him every week. John and I would talk in the locker room every week after that. And he knew that I would always come and talk to him. He was expecting it, by the time like week 3 rolled around. And just to watch him grow as a person, and you could tell his confidence was growing. And it wasn't just in the way that he talked to me, but it was happening on the field too. And just in the manner that he would speak to me too, you could tell that he was just like growing as a human being, and he was getting his swagger and his confidence back. I
Yeah.
think that's something like really cool to watch. And that's something that I talk about like on my show a lot too, is that it's trying to bring some humanity back into some of these players, right?
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
you don't really always see their faces when they're on the field, when you're watching them on TV, or even in real life at the game. But like at the end of the day, like yeah, they are people. And I think about Malik Harrison too. So Malik Harrison, I had a one-on-one sit down with him my first season that I was covering the Ravens, and we talked about mental health a lot because he the previous year had been
Yeah.
at a party in his hometown. He got shot in the leg, and like ever since then he started going to therapy. And so we had a really good discussion about that. And then he's someone that's like kind of introverted too, like kind of shy and like doesn't really like to talk. Not like a big like not a big outward guy,
Yeah.
but this was his fifth. This was his fifth season with the team, and you could kind of see him become better at talking, you know what I mean? Like out doing interviews and stuff like that as the years went on. And this year, before the season started, he's like, I know I'm in year 5. He's like, I know I need to take a bigger leadership role. And he's like, I've really started doing that, talking to some of the younger guys, not just about like stuff like, obviously playing football, but how to take care of your body, how to do like post recovery stuff. You know what I mean? Just things that you don't always think about when becoming a professional athlete. And so I think, that part, like versatility in that sense, like, going back to the radio background. I think doing
Yeah.
radio has helped me be better on TV because I know that I can talk about like literally anything for as long as you want because it's taught me to be like more observant about things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the manner in which people are and how they speak and all that. And then sorry, your second question was.
Oh, it was talking about the journalism and how it's
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
yeah
In terms of how the media is perceived. Look,
perceived. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, it hasn't been a great couple of years for us, not gonna lie to you at all. I think that a certain president that had, labeled the media fake news, that wasn't really helpful,
Yes.
right? And I
Hmm.
think that look, there is a standard, right? There's a standard that is set for most people. I consider myself to be a little bit old school, not gonna lie, in the journalism world, because like I'm a little bit old school in the sense that I'm going to go by journalistic ethics no matter what. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yeah. That's
it does
missing
not matter.
too, and it's
Yeah,
missing. It's missing big time.
it is because I think the game has changed quite a bit because it's not just TV and radio anymore, newspaper. There's digital stuff, there's podcasts, there's
Yeah.
people who are TikTokers who are delivering news on TikTok on different platforms. And well, I think it's really cool, honestly. Like I'm a big I love like the digital space. I think it's so cool for creativity purposes and to see like younger people too, like kids in their 20s just coming out of school, like what's in their brain and how they're putting out
Yeah.
content in different platform in different ways. I think it's so cool to see because again, change is good. We are evolving as a society, obviously, but I think that there needs to I think we maybe need to bring it back a little bit to some journalistic ethics about like what is ethical and what isn't. I think that's really important in what we do. And so I think that again, there's just no standard operating procedure, I think, across the board right now. I think that has made it really tough for
Yep.
those of us that want to stay journalistically ethical. Um, so I think that again, it's a constantly evolving business and evolving entity. So I think we'll just kind of have to see, especially in these next 4 years, how things are going to change for journalism.
Yeah, I was going to transition into that because, as you said, you was a political major and you got into like you was like you said you were into that politics, and politics has changed quite a bit over the years, especially
Yeah.
with media. And you said you covered news as well on top of that. And we just was talking about before we started recording, we was talking about the plane crashes that just happened here in DC, near DC and Philly, and here in Philly too, and how the politics gets into it in with the news as well. It yes, it all intertwines. As you said, sports, news, politics, social issues, all everything all does intertwine together. But as you said, certain president that we have now today and how he has treated even before treated the media and how he with these press conferences and talking like you said fake news and alternative. I think he called it once alternative facts. I think that was the first thing he said. Then he called it fake news. So everybody's using this, fake news that. I 100% agree. The integrity of it has been lost on both ends, with the media and politics as well. But how for you, like you said, that you're into politics, how has changed too with the landscape of media as well?
Oh my gosh, it's affected it so much, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So, I mean, even just I mean, like you said, it has felt like the longest January ever. Like, yesterday, my boss, like, before our meeting, he was like,
Yeah.
"Happy January 58th," like, you know? So, I mean, um, so I covered the inauguration this past year, as well
Oh, yeah,
as,
yeah.
you know, there's been a lot of anti-abortion marches that I've covered, obviously, the plane crash, as you mentioned. And, I mean, it's changed it a lot. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
there's no doubt about that. And just, I mean, even today, right now, the Department of Defense or Justice, I think, they are trying to take away workspaces for certain media entities at the Pentagon. I think it was
Yeah, I just saw that.
Politico, NBC News, you know, and so the media has always kind of been an unofficial fourth branch of government, right? And the idea, I think, of our government is checks and balances, right? That's why I have an executive, legislative, and judicial branch. But I think right now what's changing is that all of those the three branches of government are leaning the same way. And
Mm,
so I think it's difficult for checks and balances to perhaps happen. I mean, we'll see what happens here. But the media being that fourth branch of government to always kind of check everybody else in terms of are we doing things the most I don't even want to say the right way now because I think there's so many different interpretations of what the right way is, what the correct
yeah.
is now
Right.
too.
Right.
So just keeping everybody in check. And I think that we are losing some of that right. We have lost some of that right now, for being honest. And I'm not really sure how it's all going to, I think it's very much a wait and see situation. You know, I think that right now, again, we're in the first, like, what, I think 2 weeks of this
Yes.
presidency. Obviously, I mean, there's no denying that the last 8 years have definitely changed the landscape of how we do our jobs, how we cover politics, even,
Hmm.
and how political reporters are especially treated. I mean, some of those White House correspondents, like, I feel for them at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I think we've lost a lot of humanity in how we treat media, how media treats politicians, lawmakers. So I don't know. We just, I wish, honestly, if I had the answer, I'd be a bazillionaire. But
Yeah.
in terms of how
Right.
to, I think, right a lot of wrongs and how to solve all of this. But I think it is just, again, I bring it back to empathy and humanity, right? Like, I
Yep.
always talk about that. I think we've lost a lot of that. And I think that if we had a little bit more of that, things would be quite different now.
Totally different. Agreed. Totally different. And you're right. I think we have lost a sense of humanity and empathy, and it goes. You said it goes. It's me. It seems like it's media versus politics, or media versus the White House, or
Or
media
versus
versus
people even on the street,
people.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
people
Like,
on the
I
street.
notice,
Yeah.
like, when I'm
Mhm.
out doing live shots and stuff like that now, like, you know, before it kinda used to be an awe-seeking thing, like, "Oh my god," like, there's somebody like, there's a you're on TV, like, "Oh, whatever," you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
now it's a little bit more I think there are certain times where people look at you with a little bit more disdain,
Hmm.
and they
Hmm.
kind of associate you with the media outlet that you work for.
Yep.
Um, so I think it's all one big mess right now, if we're being honest, I think. So,
That's the best way to say it. I think too. Is
no,
a big
unfortunately,
mess.
that is the case.
Yeah, and then that goes to like how people consume news and things like that too. It's some people like I have friends that they don't even watch the news anymore because
Mhm,
of
same.
national or local. They don't even watch it anymore because of uh there's so much, as you said, this has been the longest January 2024, or even the year. And I was just telling my wife, and we were talking about this. I said, always in the beginning of each year, there's the news. Like, there's always a big thing or something's happened, with the news, with tragedy and things like that. It's like, man, it's just the way it starts out this year. I mean, the biggest news was with the LA wildfires, and
Mhm.
that started last year, and at the end of last year, and then we said now we have the plane crashes, and now we said the inauguration, and yeah. The P Diddy news that's still
Yep,
going on. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And Ali said, with the president of what he's blocking a lot of different things, and executive orders, and things are just there's just so much going on, and some people don't even like I said, they don't even like even watching the news. I always look at it like I still read it, I still watch it because I want to still be aware
yeah.
of everything. I don't watch it every day, but we are on social media, and we can't escape it either. But
Mhm.
what do you say about that? Like with the way, like I said, media has changed and how how it's being perceived and how things are being reported. But you say like when people just say, I just don't want to see the news, and people are getting out of the news because of of all the negative things that are going around.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pandemic just definitely changed
And
a lot
pandemic, yeah.
in the
Hmm.
industry for sure. I have so many friends who are reporters and all that that got out of the business during the pandemic because, especially in the sports world, because it was really difficult in the sports world, I think,
Yeah.
because games weren't happening, things weren't happening. We weren't getting the same access that we were before the pandemic. So I think that made things very difficult for a lot of people. And I mean, it's an ever-changing landscape, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing in local sports in particular, this was kind of happening when I was working in Madison, Wisconsin, where because of Twitter, because of Instagram highlights and TikTok and all that, you can get like highlights on your phone. So why would people tune in to a local sportscast at 11 o'clock at night when they've already seen all the
Right.
highlights of all the big games? So I think that a lot of sports departments and news directors were struggling with how do we be different. You know what I mean? I think that was like the big thing that was always being asked of us is like, how can you make this different so that you are not showing the same thing that we could have seen on ESPN 3 hours earlier.
Mm.
And I think that's something that a lot of sports partners grappled with. I think that is the reason why we don't have a lot of local. I mean, a lot of stations have gotten rid of local sports, which is for me, it's a little heartbreaking because I got my start in local sports.
Right. Right.
But even high school, I mean, even some of the bigger high schools now, like IMG and like, Modern Day and all that out in LA, like their stuff is being shown on ESPN on national TV. So I think that a lot of people have had to kind of, I think this is where you kind of see like where the strong, or whatever you want to call it, who survives and who doesn't in terms of how can you be different? How can you make your content be unique to what you're doing and where it's being aired? And for me, it's always been, again, I bring it back to people, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
connections with people and being able to tell the stories of people that no one else is going to be able to because you've built those relationships or you were able to, again, be a human in the moment. I always bring it back to that. And so I think that that has helped me personally a lot in this business in the last couple of years. But also, I think that, again, stations are trying to figure it out right now. I mean, my station that I work for, the CBS station in DC, we are the partner stations of the Washington Commanders. And so, in that sense, like sports has definitely survived for us. But also, like, some of the other schools here in DC, again, we have 4 professional teams here. And there's, but like, again, I bring it back to some of the schools that don't get a lot of coverage, like Howard. They have a great basketball program, both on the men's and women's side. They have a great football program. And they have other sports that where they're really good at too, like tennis and swimming and golf. They Steph Curry, sponsors, works with the Howard golf team
Yeah.
and sponsor stuff for them. So, I think that it's about maybe giving some attention and finding, really kind of digging for some of those stories that might not otherwise be told elsewhere. I think that that is a really big thing that is going to help save a lot of these entities or at places that, and for stories that you're not going to see on like social media and stuff like that.
I agree. I like that. As you said, local news. It's just some places don't even have local news anymore because of
Mhm.
whatever the reason is, and it is sad because that's how, as you said, that's how you got your start. That's how
Yeah.
we grew up watching local news, and it was very important. But even then, you said people are leaving there and layoffs, and it's in the media space, in any media space, there's news, sports, or anything like that. It's heartbreaking when if anybody loses a job, but it's heartbreaking when you see the media landscape just the way it is. But you're right. You got to just have to find a way to balance and a way to find different stories,
Mhm.
whatever it is. The way you know this was a podcast or broadcast or whatever it is. You got to find different ways to get to get the content out there so people can actually still watch it and enjoy it. But like you said, we'll see what happens these next 4 years when it
Yeah.
comes to. I think you said we don't have the answer to it, and we sit back and we do our best to navigate through it all. So, but I was going to ask you about you talk about the versatility and all the things you've done and to continue to do, which you do a tremendous job, by the way, too. Just wanted to
Oh, I appreciate
say
that.
that. Yeah, for sure. Uh, what would you say is your favorite uh, out of all of, if you could pick one, you don't have to pick just one, but what's a favorite thing that you like to do? Is it reporting? Is it live shots? Is it interviewing, producing? What's your favorite aspect of the media that you have done or continue to and continue to do?
For me, it's definitely the storytelling aspect of it.
Mhm.
You know, I think that sometimes we forget about the storytelling aspect of it because it's not like the cool breaking news thing. It's not the cool live shot thing. You know, we live in a very knee jerk, low attention span society. So
Yes.
I think that sometimes like the flashy things, like people love that, right? But for me, it's always been again a little bit old school. Like for me, like storytelling is never going to go out of style. You know, you're
Right.
always going to appreciate a really good story. And for me, like the one person that I always try to aspire to be or whatever is Tom Rinaldi, who used to be on ESPN. He used to do College Game Day.
Yep.
Now he's on Fox Sports. But when he was on College Game Day, just the stories that he would do before every single whatever featured game it was, that particular weekend. I mean, he could make you cry. He could make you feel. That's the thing. That's the thing. At the end of the day, for me, is like when people ask me like, "What do you want to do?" I just want to make people feel things. Like, I mean, sports is such a
Right.
wonderful, cool space to be in because, and I learned this when I was in Alabama, covering Alabama and Auburn. Like, you can make people like that don't even know each other that day. Those people will like love each other or hate each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it has this sports just has this ability to like make like grown men cry. You know what I mean? You know,
Right.
like the most alpha man, like, you know, it has the ability to make him cry. And I think it's because we feel so much when it comes to sports, right? We have so much passion inherently for the teams that we love or for the school that we went to that's playing in whatever game. And I think that that is like one of the best things about sports. And that's why I've loved it so much is that it just makes you feel things, you know what I mean? And even like
Yeah.
this goes across like sports or news too, like in news stories that I've done too. Some of the best stories that I've done are ones that, you know, it wasn't like a big story. It wasn't like, you know, the news of the day, but it was one that, you know, you really got to connect with somebody that had something to say, had a story, had a message out there. And at the end of the day, like you made somebody else feel something. I mean, literally the day before yesterday when I was at the site of the plane crash where they were
Yeah.
pulling of the DC plane crash right outside Reagan, where they were pulling up parts of the plane. They were pulling up bodies.
Mhm.
And before my noon live shot, I noticed this woman who happened to just be there. There was a ton of media there, by the way. I mean, you were not hearing English being spoken. Like, I mean, there's a German reporter, a Russian
Yeah.
reporter on the other side of me. It was chaos. And so I noticed this woman that just was quietly kind of standing there. She was holding a Bible, like, and she was just kind of like looking to the sky and like praying. And so I was kind of like, I was like, I want to go talk to that lady after I'm done with my live shot. So I kind of like went over to her and she was like kind of tearing up. So I was like, ma'am, are you okay? I was like, I'm sorry to bother you, but like, are you okay? And
Yeah.
she was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah." And she was like, you know, she like lived in Reston, Virginia, which is a suburb of in Northern Virginia of DC. And she said that she just felt so deeply for these people that were on this plane and their families that she felt that she had to come out here and just, you know, pray to herself, pray a couple things, pray for the souls that were on this plane.
Mhm.
And that was kind of it, you know. And I asked her, I was like, "Would you mind?" Like, I was like, "I'm just like very intrigued, touched by why you're here in your story."
Yeah.
I was like, "Would you mind just like doing a quick little interview?" And she was like, she wasn't too keen on it at first, but then she was like, "I can tell you're a good person." I was like, "Okay." And she was like, "I can tell you're not like other reporters." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "I'm going to take that as a compliment for the moment."
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and then she, you know, she did the interview and ended up being like a really great story. And yeah, it wasn't, you know, I wasn't, you know, interviewing the head of the NTSB or I wasn't at the Trump presser. I wasn't any of that stuff. But at the end of the day, like, you know, this woman's story to be able to put out there for a little bit of goodness in the world, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it like did pretty well on social media. I've had a lot of people come up to me and talk to me about this story just in terms of just putting a little bit of good out there. I don't know. I know it sounds cheesy and corny and a little bit like trite and mundane, but at the end of the day, you just want to put some. I don't know. I think a lot of us get into this business in the very beginning to like change the world. You know what I mean? To do some good for the world, and like I
Mhm.
think a lot along the way, a lot of us lose sight of that. But I've always tried to like maintain some of that. So hopefully that's kind of what it is.
No, I love that. I really do because you're right. This world needs good. It needs, good stories and good, just good people doing
Yeah.
great things. And um that is like we talked about it earlier. Just it's missing empathy and happiness and all these things is missing, and it's getting to the point where it's like, wow, why is there's so much of this, hatred and all these things. It's getting out of hand. It totally
Yeah.
is. But you're right. I think the storytelling part of it, I love that aspect. That's one reason why I do this podcast is because I love to hear people's story. I love to heard your story of just you said how you got started and why you do it and things like that. And I enjoy it. I love that. And this it's old school, but long form is great. And because you can hear there's layers to everybody, there's layers to people. And when you peel back layers of people, it's interesting. It's the storytelling, even with athletes, with just in general, just with people. Good to just to hear that. It's good to have that those type of stories, for sure. Just got a couple more. I'm enjoying the conversation. I can feel like I could talk to you forever. It's
I do
just what
talk a
it
lot, but yeah.
no, I love this. I really do. I want to go back to you said your love for college football, college sports in
Yes.
general,
Yes.
and how that has changed too. You talked about NIL and transfer portals and how that's the landscape. Then we had the 12-team playoff for football this year. They had that first year. They had its ups and downs, and I think it was Laura Rutledge who said something like, her being a reporter and what she does and she said something like she feels for the fans of the with who I don't even know who to cheer for anymore. Like I don't even know who's going to be on the team. She said the next
Yeah.
year and things like that. But since you cover it and you are a big fan, are you a fan of NIL? And what do you think of the landscape of college sports in general, the transfer portal and all that? What's your take on all that over the last 4 or 5 years?
Um, Look, the reason why I loved college football especially so much was because there's still like a purity, like love of the game, right? It's not like you're
Mm-hmm.
playing for a paycheck. Obviously, that has changed a little bit now,
Right.
with NILs and with the transfer portal and with everything else that's happening. Look, I think it's great for the players because at the end of the day, they're the ones out there sacrificing their physical, mental, whatever emotional selves to
Yeah.
play this game that we all love so much for entertainment. You know what I mean? At the end of the day. And I do like that the players do make something financially out of it. You know what I mean? 'Cause
Right. Yes.
before I'm like picking my words very careful here. I think
Right.
before
Right.
it was difficult too, right? Because the schools making and the NCAA is making all of this money out of like some of these guys who like 1.1% of them is going to play at the next level, right? Especially
Mhm.
for women's sports. You know what I mean? The women's sports landscape. I think it's great that there's so much more attention now, especially on women's basketball. I think that it's really great because I think at the end of the day, when you were a woman that was playing a sport at the college level, you were kind of out of after graduation, like that was kind of it, like, unless
Yeah.
you could play for like an Olympic team or a national team or something like that. And that part really sucked, I think. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
I do like the NILs and, in the sense that it's about the players, right? The players are getting some financial gain out of this. In terms of like the portal and all that stuff, I mean, I like it again that the players it's benefiting the players at the end of the day. That
Yeah.
part is like I love so much. But I know I have friends who are coaches and stuff like that, obviously, but it is hell on earth for a lot of these coaches, because you're literally it's like you're in a bidding war, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For someone, and like it's depending on what you can offer, what the school can offer. Is your school offering NIL money to kind of help you along? I mean, I think that part of it has become so challenging for coaches and athletic directors and programs. But again, especially I can bring it back to the coaches who most of them love this game so much and love this game just as much as we do, as
Yeah.
the fans do, or otherwise
Yeah.
they wouldn't be in this because that life is not for everybody. But I think it's made, especially again, I think they need to figure out some kind of standard operating procedure. The NCAA does with like the portal and stuff like that, which I know that they're in the process thereof, because obviously there's some dates that have changed this year that were different from last year. And there's like the 2 signing days now and like the different portals. it does make it really tough because if you have, like, as you were mentioning earlier, if you do have a player that you are in particular are a fan of, you're just going to probably follow and be a fan of that player to like wherever he goes, right? Not necessarily the program. So I think it has made things a lot more complicated at the college level. And again, my answer is gonna be a little bit twofold. I am a fan of it because it does benefit the players, but
Mhm.
I do think that it has made things very challenging for the coaches and a lot of these schools. So, I mean, you think about like, I mean, on what planet and what universe does Bill Belichick go to college for?
Yeah, to go to North Carolina. Right, right,
Um,
right.
so usually like people are going the other way. And so I think that I mean, but people, the thing is about like, the NIL and stuff like that too, like the paying the players thing, like everybody was doing it before. It's just kind of like now out in the open. You know what I mean? I think people are kind of doing it under the table before, for sure.
Oh
Um,
yeah, for
Now
sure.
it's just like more acceptable. So I
Mhm.
guess widely acceptable. So it's going to be interesting to see how the next couple of years play out, especially again with the expanded playoff, with more coaches getting, I think, opportunities to be able to like move up in that sense, to get more attention in that sense. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think about Marcus Freeman is the first guy that I think of. You know what I mean? How he's
Mhm.
had so much opportunity right now just from being the right place, right time, and being successful at being very successful. Mark my words,
Right.
he does.
Yeah.
So I was really, no offense, Ohio State, I was really rooting for them in the play in the, in the championship.
Yeah. Yes, no, that's so true. It's I agree with a lot of what you said about the NIL and the athletes really controlling how they get paid, sponsors, and it's almost like it's sets them up like they have a job. You said
Yeah,
the 1% make it the professional, in the pros, and that other 99%, after they're done with school and being student athletes or whatever, it's seems like okay, what do we do now? But if they got sponsorships, they got, they
yeah,
learn how to work in some way. And so I agree with that. I think it can, you said there needs to be some measures or some type of, I wouldn't say restrictions, but something in play with the transfer portal because that can get out of hand in
it is.
some
I mean,
way.
it's kind of getting out of hand now. You
Yeah,
know
it
what I mean?
is.
Like
Yeah.
some of these guys, like I think about, like I mean, some of these guys, I'm like, are you in your like sixth year of college right now? Like, what year are you in right now?
Yeah,
And
six-year
it kind of
seniors.
sucks for some of the guys. And previously, Devontae Walker, he was a Ravens draft pick this past year. He actually started out. This poor guy. So he's wide receiver. He started out actually at North Carolina Central and HBCU, and then he it was during a pandemic year, so he ended up transferring to Akron. I can't remember. But then, anyways, he ended up finishing his career at UNC to be closer to home. He's from North Carolina, but originally he had to sit out like a number of years because of the transfer portal. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
the NCAA said that he couldn't play like right away at UNC, and so I think that some of the guys that have done that in the past are looking at now are kind of looking at like this is a mess
Yeah.
because but they are kind of in favor. They're like, if I could do that, if I could have done that back then, my career would have been completely different.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's right. And I think if it's opportunities for the athletes to move to a different school or anything like that, to have opportunity to play, I think it's great. It's great because you
Yeah,
might
play right
have
away. Why
some.
do you have to sit out a year? Like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like,
right,
I
right,
didn't
right.
like that.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, and yeah, so if you don't, say you don't get any, if you just have you get a little bit of time when you're playing for one school, and you have opportunity to start at another school.
Right.
Yeah, you take that. So yes, I do feel bad for, like you said, I feel bad for the the media covering it because he was like, okay, I'm covering this team. Like
Yeah.
you're a beat reporter, you're a beat reporter for this school, and you got a chance to know the team, and then the next thing you know, half the team is all gone from transfer portal. It's
Yeah.
like who's on the team now? So you guys got to really be on point of who's on the team, and but that goes with the researching and part of it too. So yeah, it's yeah. So I agree with you. It is kind of like a twofold in a way, but
Crazy.
I
No, the coaches. I feel so bad for the
and then
coaches
the
more than
coaches too.
anything.
Yeah, the
It's so
coaches
because you're
especially.
literally running around like a crazy person trying to figure out like if you can get this guy, where is this guy taking a visit? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
I've
yeah.
seen it from that perspective too, that like
Oh, for
it is
sure.
tough.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I totally agree with that. All right, last one, and then I'll let you go on this. I'll let you go on this one. Actually, I got two, but this one I want to ask you about the Ravens and the Commanders. Both tremendous years, seasons that they've had. The Ravens. they didn't get to where they wanted to go. I know they were Super Bowl contenders and fell short on that. Lamar Jackson had another incredible MVP year, probably going to be the MVP for the third time, but didn't end well. But and then the Commanders. I mean, surprising great season. They ran to my Eagles, unfortunately, last week. but Jaden Daniels, tremendous year, probably rookie of the year and everything too. But wow, to be to able to see cover those teams. What do you think of both of their seasons?
I mean, it's a pretty good time to be a football fan in this area, in Baltimore, and in the district, in the districts, DMV surrounding areas. I obviously cover the Ravens a lot more closely. I mean, see, my thing was like, I thought they were going to go to the Super Bowl last year because that defense last year was unstoppable, unfreaking believable, And so, this year I was a little bit more hesitant to be like, oh my God, this is a Super Bowl year, but that offense this year, if you could put together last year's Ravens defense with this year's Ravens offense, and look, I give a lot of the guys on this team so much credit because of the expectation and what they were able to do. I mean, Lamar and Derrick Henry, like when they first signed Derrick Henry in the offseason, I was like, this isn't even fair. Like, this is so unfair. And then they start off 0-2 and you're like, wait, what's happening right now? But like, I know Lamar Jackson gets a lot of criticism. I will always be a Lamar Jackson fan, no matter what, because of A, his ability to do what he does, B, the manner in which he has carried himself to do the things that he does. Because everyone's like always like, oh, pretty good for a running back, right? And he was able to defy a lot of those odds and expectations. And on top of that, like he's just like, I think a lot of people don't know this, he's just like a great guy. You know what I mean? He's like actually like really funny and like just like a joy to be around, if we're being honest. And like the thing that I like about Lamar so much is that he's always been himself. He has never gotten to the league and be like, he thought he needed to be like buttoned up and like put on a face just because he was, the leader of this team. He's a kid from South Florida who was raised in the environment that he was, and he's never going to stop being that. And I will tell you, he's always so respectful of women. I will tell you that. So there was one time in the locker room, they have like a basketball hoop and like games and they're like cornhole and stuff like that. And this year, the basketball hoop has been like a very popular thing. And so I think somebody like passed me the ball. I can't remember who. I think it might have been like Kyle Hamilton or something like that. Like whatever, pass me the ball, take a shot. And they're like, take a shot. And I'm like, no, I'm good. And like, no, take a shot. And I was like, okay. Like me, like not very, basketball's not my game. So like take a shot. And then Malik Cunningham, wide receiver, comes over and just like Dikembe Mutombo's me. Like, you know what I mean? Like out of my face. And then Lamar is like, on him. He's like, how could you do that? He's like, don't do that. She's a girl. What's wrong with you? Blah. He's like, that was so mean. All this stuff, getting in his face about it. And Lamar goes over and gets the ball. He's like, here, take another shot. I'm like, no, it's really okay. I'm really okay. He said, no, take a shot. Take a shot. I missed it. And I was like, oh my God. Okay, now I'm embarrassed. Okay, bye. And then he comes and he's like, take another shot. And like, make with the bucket. I'm like, okay. And then like after that, he's like reaming like, Malik still being like, you can't do that to a girl. Like, So Lamar's like, he's the best. Like, I love Lamar. He's the best human. And so it was, I mean, most of those guys, again, in that locker room, there's been a lot of carryover from the last couple of years. So this is my 4th season covering the team. I've been around most of those guys. Like, there's just so many good human beings in there. Kyle Hamilton is another one who I adore so much. I had the first one-on-one sit down with him when he was drafted. And he's funny, a character. But the thing I respect about him so much is that he's always taken, like, the criticism, you know what I mean? Like in his rookie year, he didn't really get it, you know what I mean? Until about like halfway through the season. But for the first half of the season, he just stood there, took all the criticism, said like, yeah, I know I messed up. Like, yeah, I know I did this. Like, and you know what I mean? Like, we identify a little bit too, because he's half Korean. His mother's Korean. Okay, and so he like would make all these like kind of like Asian mom jokes at me in the beginning. He's like, oh, I know, because like the Asian mom thing. I was like, oh, I know, but maybe you shouldn't say that out loud. But, but like that's like a good thing about this job and stuff like that. It's not building relationships, you know what I mean? So the Ravens, I mean, they'll be back next year. I have no doubt in my mind in that. Lamar is so determined to win a Super Bowl. He said that the night that he was drafted. And I will always root for that guy, no matter where he is. The Commanders, I spent a little less time with them than I did the Ravens. But Jaden Daniels, too, is like an ultimate pro. He's so mature for his age. I mean, he's a rookie. And yet he was pretty unrattled, honestly, all season. Even when he was making mistakes, you could tell that he wasn't like, he had that, I call
Yeah.
it the Mahomes factor. You know what I mean? Patrick Mahomes, you could be throwing darts at his face while he's trying to run out of the pocket and make a play, and he would be unfazed. And so Jaden Daniels, I think, possesses a lot of that. He had a really great O-line this year. They definitely took some strides on defense as well,
Yep.
in terms of what they were able to accomplish. And yeah, I think that they did what people thought that they couldn't do. And I think
Hmm.
that I don't care who you are, whether you're a professional athlete, it's human nature. If someone tells you that you can't do something, that you're going to sure as hell try to do it. And so I think that that was a big part of this team too. And they had a lot of veterans on the team that were great. Bobby Wagner, a big fan of him
Yep.
as well. He was balling out this season as well. So a lot of really good, and Terry McLaurin, God, I forgot about him too. Just guys on this team who have been around this franchise and who are able to really rally around this rookie quarterback,
Yeah.
who had, again, so much poise and so much talent. But I think that they're going to love him for a very long time to come.
Yeah, they will, and I agree with Lamar, and I like Lamar a lot, and a
Love
big
Lamar.
fan of his too. And he, the criticism he takes, and like, oh, he's this in the playoffs, his record in the playoffs, and he's trying his hardest, trying his best, and he's determined. Like you said, he's determined to get to a Super Bowl. And I know it comes with the territory, being a quarterback, maybe about to be a 3-time MVP. And now they're saying, okay, now you have to win the big one and all this. And that it's interesting because he takes a lot of criticism. Jalen Hurts takes a lot of criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. And I'm sure Jay Daniels, when he gets a couple more years, oh, he's not leading the team. But I'm thinking, okay, these guys, you have a 2-time MVP. You got a guy in Jalen Hurts who just led his team to the Super Bowl again, second time in 3 years, and all this. So it's, I guess, like I said, I guess it just comes with being a quarterback or just in general. But it's
It comes with being a quarterback, but also, if I may, I think it comes with being a black quarterback in the
black
league.
quarterback. Yeah, yeah,
It 100% is,
yeah.
because you look at some of the criticism that Lamar Jackson faces as opposed to Josh Allen. Like, I mean, like,
Yes,
not like playing like the race, like whatever, the race card hero and stuff like that. But it definitely absolutely is, because
it
I
is.
remember there was an unfortunate incident Lamar had a couple of years ago where he kind of clapped back at a fan on Twitter who was giving him criticism, whatever. And he had to come out and, like, talk to us about it and, like, make a statement about it, which is fine. But I remember talking to a player in the locker room who I will not name. It was kind of a little bit of a side conversation. And he's like, no, he's like, because he's a black quarterback, if you
Mhm.
label him as X, Y, and Z, that's going to stick with him for the rest of his career. And he was like, but it's different. He's like, you look at, I guess, I don't even remember this, and kind of proved his point. But he was like, do you remember, like, a couple years ago, like, Josh Allen had some, like, racist, like, tweets, like, resurfaced? And I was like, no, I don't even remember that. He's like, see, you don't even remember, because the society has forgiven him automatically like
They
that,
got rid
whereas
of them.
Lamar is going to stick with him for the rest of his career.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, again, it's about having these conversations with people, right? I think that at the
yeah,
end of the day, it is that. But yeah, I think that it is so tough to be in the position of those guys. And I really, I mean, I don't know what it's like, obviously, but I genuinely do empathize with them, and I commend them so much for being able to turn it off and being able to do what they do.
yeah. They stay above the criticism and above the fray because they have to, because it would eat them up if they didn't. But you're right. It's totally being black quarterbacks, and because it was interesting because there was a stretch where either Jalen Hurts he was struggling, or he wasn't, the passing yards wasn't there, and that goes with the system. I mean, like you said, Derrick Henry went to Baltimore, they ran the
Yeah.
football. Saquon Barkley, he had a historic year. Why? And they're winning, so it didn't matter. So Jalen's like, I'm just doing whatever it takes to win. That just showed the unselfishness of him, like guys like
Mhm.
Lamar and like that. They want to win. They just want to win, no matter how it looks and everything
Yep.
too. But the critics and everything, they look at, oh, Jalen Hurts is doing this or Lamar's not doing this, but you get someone, like you said, again, like I said, I like Josh Allen too, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he does the same thing at the same type of game or whatever, only throws for 150 yards, crickets. It's like, oh,
He just
nothing.
had a bad day.
Yeah, he just had a bad game, and they won. Jalen Hurts did the same thing, and they won. Lamar did the same thing, and they won. So yeah, it's. So I can go on, like with you. I can go on and on about that as well.
Same.
So, but yes, Melissa, it has been a pleasure getting to know you, talk to
Yeah,
you. And
pleasure's mine.
this was so much fun. We're gonna end on this. Any final words? Anything you got coming? Anything you can announce? Anything, because I know you got probably some
Oh, I
things
have
coming up.
nothing going. I have
Yeah,
a lot of sleep coming up. I will add
yeah,
sleep and a vacation for the
sleeping
rest of the month.
vacation.
No, but like for the people that I know that this is sometimes we make this sometimes look like a glamorous, cool job. And at the end of the day, I'm so grateful that I get to watch football for a living, you know?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like if you want to do this, then do it. I think there's a lot of people out there, some of us old heads are kind of discouraging some of the younger people to do this because of the change in the game. No, be creative. Do whatever,
Right.
like, if this is what you want to do, then I say go for it. What's stopping you truly? But always just remember to remember the people aspect. Like, I mean, the storytelling aspect, the people aspect, the empathy aspect. At the end of the day,
Yep.
all these big time athletes, all that, they're people too. Sometimes you just gotta treat them like people too.
For sure, you're right. The humanization of that is forgotten, that they're human, and it's good to hear those stories of those humans. But Melissa, again, thank you again.
Thank you.
I can't I appreciate you. I can't appreciate you enough for doing this and taking the time. Let everyone know they can follow your journey, follow you on social media, reach out to you for questions or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm Melissa Y. Kim on all platforms, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Don't really have Facebook anymore. But yeah, you can reach out to me there. I'm always if you're like coming up in the business and all that, I'm always willing to answer questions and chat and all that. I always get coffee with people and stuff in these instances, if they need some help in the business, whatever, because a lot of people helped me to get to where I was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of paying it forward. So
Yeah, absolutely. So follow Melissa and all the incredible work she's doing in this media space and in all aspects, sports, news, media, everything. So again, follow her. And they say if you have questions, you said people don't want to, advice or anything like that, you can definitely look at her journey and reach out as well. So again, I can't thank you enough. You can follow me on all the platforms as well, at Get the Real Deal or Courtney Harden on Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter, and Instagram, and LinkedIn, all those things. So, yes, this video will be up on all the platforms as well. Again, thank Melissa, and enjoy the rest of the weekend, and enjoy the Super Bowl next week as well.
Yes, thank you too. We'll be rooting for the Eagles for sure.
Oh, I appreciate that for sure. Yes, definitely ready for that. So again, until next time, everyone be safe and stay safe as well, and God bless to everyone. Peace.